read you a psalm, or some other psalm. I really feel like somebody needs to hear this morning. It says, I will bless the Lord who guides me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. No wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety. For you will not leave my soul among the dead or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. Whatever your struggle is this morning, he sees you right now, where you are, right in this place. Even at night, when your heart is aching, he sees you.
Psalm 16. That's something that we ought to read every day, isn't it? Just to remind us. Okay, thank you. So Adril's going to read us a message from the Bible, and then it's over to Becky for our preach. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Today's reading is taken from, if I can just find it, 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 through to 21. It says, Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God, but anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. God showed how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. This is real love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. Dear friends, since God loved us that much, we surely ought to love each other. No one has ever seen God, but if we love each other, God lives in us, and his love is brought to full expression in us. And God has given us his Spirit as proof that we live in him and he in us. Furthermore, we have seen with our own eyes and now testify that the Father sent his Son to be with the Savior of the world. All who declare that Jesus is the Son of God have God living in them, and they live in God. We know how much God loves us, and we have put our trust in his love. God is love, and all who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. And as we live in God, our love grows more perfect. So we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Jesus here in this world. Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. We love each other because he loved us first. If someone says, I love God, but hates a fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we do not love people we can see, how can we love God whom we cannot see? And he has given us this command: those who love God must also love their fellow believers. Amen.
Morning. I brought my glasses just in case. All right. It's not a just in case, I've got to use them. Oh dear. Don't like that part of getting old. Anyway, I'm going to talk this morning. I can't see you when I do that though. talk this morning about being a slave to fear. Okay, so fear is something that people deal with every day. Anxiety is on the rise, fearfulness of everything. People are fearful of having not got enough money, or flying, or spiders, or being away from home, being fearful of rejection, losing loved ones. There's so much that we are fearful of in this day and age. And the Bible is full of fear not. So sometimes we live like the world more than we live like the Bible. And so God's been challenging me for a while with this. And in fact, I've got a testimony to tell you, because I was very fearful of going to the dentist. I hate the dentist. Well, I don't anymore, actually. This is my testimony. And I didn't go for, it must be 15 years. And yeah, I don't like the dentist at all. And God really challenged me one day and said, it's ridiculous. Why are you fearful of going to the dentist? Well, I don't like the noise. In fact, I went to a dentist when I first moved to Uttoxeter and sat in the waiting room and just cried the whole time, because I could hear noises going on and I was petrified. And it's irrational. It's crazy. But, and when I moved dentist after that, they had on top of my notes in huge writing, patient is very nervous, exclamation, 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 It was like the whole top of the page. But after 15 years of not going to the dentist, I finally, last year, after God challenged me, went to the dentist, and I can sit in the office and not have any worries at all. God has taken my fear completely. So it's possible to get rid of your fear when you trust God. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. The enemy loves nothing more than us living in fear. If he can get us to be fearful things in life, then he's got a hold of us in some way. And it can be quite debilitating to some people, as I found out when I went to the dentist. But it has a deep impact, not just on us as a person. It's our mind, it's our body, and it's our spirit. This is what a study by Minnesota University says about fear. Fear is a human emotion that is triggered by a perceived threat. It is a basic survival mechanism that signals our body to danger with a fight or flight response. As such, it is an essential part of keeping us safe. However, when people live in constant fear, physical dangers in their environment, or threats that they perceive, they can experience negative impacts, and they can even become incapacitated. So this is what they go on to say. The impact of chronic fear looks like physical health. Your fear weakens your immune system and can cause cardiovascular damage. Gastroenteritis, I can't even say that word. Intestinal problems, such as ulcers and irritable bowel syndrome, and decreased fertility. It can lead to accelerated aging and even premature death. That's just the physical health. It can impact your memory. Fear can impair formation of long-term memories and cause damage to certain parts of your brain. This can make it even more difficult to regulate fear and can leave a person anxious most of the time. Third thing, it affects your brain processing and reactivity. Fear can interpret processes in your brain that allows you to regulate emotions, to read non-verbal cues and other information, reflect before acting, or act ethically. This impacts our thinking and decision-making in negative ways, leaving us susceptible to intense motions and impulsive reactions. Number 4, it does your mental health. Other consequences of long-term fear include fatigue, clinical depression, and PTSD. So, that's the medical professional view of fear. So we can live with that constantly, or on the other hand, we can live with what God says, do not fear about, okay? So we've seen what the science says about it. Now we're going to look at some examples of people in the Bible who were crippled by fear, and it stopped them from living God's potential for their lives. So let's go to 1 Samuel 17, please. And we're going to start at verse 17. I'm sure you all know the story of David and Goliath, but I'm going to read you part of that story. The Philistines now mustered their army for battle and camped between Soko in Judah and Azekah at Ephesdammim. Oh, I don't know what that word is. Saul countered by gathering his Israelite troops near the valley of Elah. So the Philistines and Israelites faced each other on opposite sides with a valley between them. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet, and his bronze coat of mail weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leg armor, and he carried a bronze javelin on his shoulder. The shaft of his spear was as heavy and as thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. His armor-bearer walked ahead of him, carrying a shield. Goliath stood and shouted a taunt across to the Israelites. "Why are you all coming out to fight?" he called. "I am the Philistine champion, but you are only the servants of Saul. Choose one man to come down here and fight with me. If he kills me, then he will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send me a man who will fight me." When Saul and the Israelites heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken. So we can see the army of Israel are out to fight against their enemy. But little did they know when they went to battle first that there was a big, huge giant in the way. Okay? What does the Bible say as soon as they saw Goliath? They were terrified and deeply shaken. What was it we were saying about earlier with scientists' point of view? Fear is debilitating. It's terrifying to them to look and see what all that lies ahead, especially when they can see the problem that is the giant right in front of them. What about you? Is all you can see ahead of you a giant? Is all you can see a giant of a problem? Is fear of what's to come or what's in front of you too much? I want to walk through some of this story today and see that we can overcome our fear and be ready in the battle. Okay, so a few points I've thought about while I've been studying is this. Number one, they were fearful of a man. The Israelites took one look at this giant and were terrified. The thing is, the Israelites should have known better, because for years, God had always looked after them. God had always come and won battles for them. God took them through the Red Sea, and he took them to the Promised Land. But here they are, terrified of a man, when they knew that they had God on their side. Here's what happens when we take our eyes off God. We see the giant that's standing there in the way. We forgot the past. We forget the past where God has destroyed the giant before, and we choose instead to be overrun by fear. This is what Moses said in Exodus 14:13-14. "Don't be afraid, just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm." You know, there's so many things that were facing the Israelites with Moses, but that's what they chose to do, was to stand still and stay calm. I really believe that God is saying to people here this morning, including me, don't be afraid, just stand still and see that the Lord will rescue you. This is what Proverbs 29:25 says. Fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety. The fear of human opinion disables, but trusting in God protects you from that. Don't fear man. Keep your eyes on Jesus, because when you trust in him alone, he's the safety that you need. He's your protection against the enemy's schemes and against his lies. It's the same advice from Isaiah 51:7. It says, listen to me, you who know right from wrong, you who cherish my Lord in your hearts, do not be afraid of people's scorn, nor fear their insults. So many verses that say, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't fear. I'm with you all the time. Deuteronomy 1:29-33 says, but I said to you, don't be shocked or afraid by them. The Lord your God is going ahead of you. He will fight for you just as you saw him do in Egypt. And you saw how the Lord your God cared for you all the way as you traveled through the wilderness, just as a father cares for his child. Now he has brought you to this place. But even after all he did, you refused to trust the Lord your God, who goes before you looking for the best places to camp, guiding you with a pillar of fire at night and a pillar of cloud by day. Don't make the same mistakes the Israelites made. Our God is for us. He's behind us. He's in front of us. He is underneath us. He's above us. He is all around us. And all he asks is that we trust him instead of being fearful of what might be. Because you never know what your brain thinks in the time. But if we can think of that, not to fear man, but to fear God, and remember that in our brain. The second thing was, do not fear the battle. The battle belongs to the Lord. This is what the Israelites were when they were facing Goliath, should have looked at, because it had happened so many times before. As I said, it was a battle that they couldn't win when they looked at it. The odds were against them. They weren't looking at God or anything else. They were just looking at this battle that was going to happen. You see, people look at the outward appearance of their Goliath and think they'll never win the battle. So they're terrified of the battle. But here is what David said to Goliath before he went to kill him. It's 1 Samuel 17:47. This is David speaking. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give it to us. So David was confident before he even went into the battle that God was with him and God was by his side. Instead of being afraid, he stood up and addressed the fear. He stood up and retorted back, saying, I know my God. I know he will rescue me. The battle isn't mine for me to fight. It's his. And I know that the battle's already won. And that's something that God has been prodding me with. You need to just trust me. You just need to trust me. I'm going to just sit back and let God win it his way. You know, who would have thought they'd have this guy in armor standing 9 feet tall, and then a little boy came along with a sword, a sling and stones, you know? It may be not the way you think it's going to happen, but God will win his way in the right time. And that's the kind of attitude we all need to think about when there's a battle. We don't think it's impossible. We need to think we can win because of our God. We need to stand and declare that God is in control. In 2 Chronicles 20:15, it says this, listen, all you people of Judah and Jerusalem. Listen, King Jehoshaphat. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid. Don't be discouraged by this mighty army. for the battle is not yours, but God's." Messengers came to King Jehoshaphat and told him that there was armies marching towards him from every angle. Jehoshaphat was terrified, and he begged the Lord for guidance, and he ordered everybody in Jerusalem and Judah to begin the fast. So as they were gathered there, that guy prophesied, "Just don't be afraid, don't be discouraged. The battle is not yours, God's." And if you keep reading, God is fighting every step because he knows what's before us. And Jehoshaphat won the war because they kept their eyes on Jesus. God is fighting every single step for us. Can you see him instead of the battle? And stand and watch the Lord deliver you from the battle. King Jehoshaphat, where to turn. The Lord is in the battle with you. There's no need to fear. Then the third thing I thought of was they had a healthy fear. David had a healthy fear of the Lord. Matthew 10 verse 28 says, "Don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body. They cannot touch your soul. Fear only God, who can destroy both soul and body in hell." The Israelites could only see the fear when the solution was theirs all along. They could have relied on God's strength, but they were in blind panic. All they could see was this huge giant and hear his threats day after day. They only thought about themselves and the loss to their army. They knew that God had done so many things for them, won so many battles, but there was a young man in training the whole time for a huge role. And here he enters, this young shepherd boy, used to looking after sheep, ready to go out and fight this huge giant because he feared his God more than he feared what was standing in front of him. And I don't mean he was shaking with fear because of God. I mean he was in utter respect and awe of God, which results in not fearing what God had brought him to. You know, God might be bringing you to something that's completely different, out of your depth. You think it's out of your comfort zone. But if we can be like David and fear God because he's the one that brought us to it, he will get us through it. He's concentrating on what God has done for him before. You know, he's thinking of the goodness of God when he had to go and fight a bear and a lion just to keep his sheep fit, his sheep good. How about us? Can we fear God above our circumstances and know that God is in control? He knew that God had his back when he was fighting a lion and a bear. And now he knows that God's got his back while he's going out to fight this giant. What about you and what about me? If we want to find where God is in the battle, we can believe it in our hearts and we'll see it happen right in front of our eyes. I guarantee. Proverbs 9:10 says, "Fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment." So in the battle, Jesus will be our guide and our judge and our wisdom and our strength. The fear of the Lord is wisdom. David learned this early on in his life. That is why he could go and do what he did through his life. He trusted and he feared God. It was him first and other thoughts last. Fear has to bow to the Lord. We cannot trust in him and fear at the same time. It doesn't work. So how are we going to do this? You know, King Saul thought Goliath was too big to fight, but David thought he was too big to miss. Yeah, shall I say that again? King Saul thought Goliath was too big to fight, and David thought he was too big to miss. Where are we in our trust of God? The fourth thing was fear of the challenge. It's too much for me. I can't do it. I don't like change. I can't do anything. I'm okay in my routine. I don't need to push myself out of my position. I don't know what to do anymore. Anyone know those excuses? I do. What is God asking of you to step out and out into? Is he asking you to give more time for things in his kingdom? Is he asking you to move your job into something else? Is he asking you to spend more time in his presence? Is he asking you to make a step forward into the unknown? Is fear stopping you from taking that step? I feel it like he's challenging someone this morning to step out and accept the challenge in his power and his might. When you get ready for the challenge in his timing, you will be victorious. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." We have to trust God with everything we've got. Doesn't matter how big or small that problem may be. David only had 5 stones in his bag and a tiny sling. And he only had to use one of those because God's timing got it right every time. You know? That tiny stone brought down that big giant. God has given everything that we need to fight the battle so that we can trust him in the battle. Don't kid yourself with someone else's armor. David tried on Saul's armor. You know, it's somebody else's. That's for somebody else's battle. Don't try and use someone else's battle armor. But God gives you just what you need at the right time for your battle. Trust God now that he has given you what you need for the fight. So if you're living in fear of men, please look to God. He's the only one that we need to please, not man. Here's what David said in Psalm 54 after being taken by his enemies. "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust, and I'm not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" You know, he'd been taken by the Philistines, and here he is saying, "I'm afraid, but I trust in God. I will not worry about what men can do to me." Don't fear the battle ahead. God is fighting your corner if you are following him. Just be still and know that he is God. Don't fear the challenge. The Lord is faithful and he's true to his word. He is for you. He is not against you. I urge you to accept the challenge and not to fear what he requires of you. Remember, he is the one that we should fear. Proverbs 19:23 says, "Fear of the Lord leads to life, bringing security and protection from harm." He will be with you in the fight. But fear him first, put him first, keep your eyes on Jesus, and the fear will subside. Psalm 34:9 says, "Fear the Lord, you his godly people, for those who fear him will have all that they need." He's for you this morning. We don't need to fear the fight. We don't need to fear the battle. He is with you all of the way. I've just got a song I want to play at the end. It's called "My God Fights for Me." And it's talking about a few people in the Bible that were fearful, but they found out that God fought for them. So, yeah, play that one, please, Andrew.
I was just a shepherd boy, without a shield, without a sword, fed up with the giant's voice, screaming curses to the Lord. Now I walk down the hill alone, with a pocket full of river stones. But what What the Philistine couldn't see is what I had was more than me. See, on my own I'm weak, but my God fights for me. Well, I was servant to the king, interpreting his crazy dreams. I won't worship mortal men, so they threw me in the lion's den. Vicious teeth were all I saw, till something came and shut their jaws. You couldn't find a scratch on me. In fact, that night I fell asleep. When morning came, it shocked them all, 'cause my God fights for me. Oh yes, he does.
I stumbled into the room with alabaster and my wounds. I could feel their judging eyes as I knelt before the Christ. I poured my oil upon his feet. I didn't care who saw me weep. I gave him all I had that day, and he should have sent me on my way. But instead he lifted up my head, 'cause my God fights for me. Oh, he's my shield, he's my sword. The victory is the Lord's. He's my shield, he's my sword. The victory is the Lord's.
So what's your story here today? What's the giant in your way? Are you trapped and can't get out? Or are you staring down a lion's mouth? Can you stand before the Lord? Or do you need to hit the floor? No matter what you've done, 'cause the battle is already won. So lift your voice with me and say that my God fights for me. Oh yeah. So lift your voice in victory, 'cause my God fights for me.
Yes, my God does fight for me. He fights for us. He fights for all of us. Thank you, Becky. Brilliant. Thank you. So that's come to the end. We're early, aren't we, today? The box is still here. If you want to pick, come and get, open the lid and get your fears, your worries, your concerns and your anxieties. If you want to get them out of the box and take them home with you, you can. But if you want to leave them in the box belongs to Jesus. And Jesus is the one for all your fears, your anxieties, your concerns. You can leave them in. I'm leaving mine in for him to deal with. He's greater than us. He's greater than we will ever be. We are good. We're all good. But he's better. Okay, so please remember Sean in your prayers this week. And please remember Pastor Dave in your prayers this week as well. Don't forget, no house groups, no home groups this week, half term. But the larder is open. If you can come and do a bit of litter picking, if you can come and do a bit of dusting, that would be wonderful. Please tell Becky. and we'll see you all next week. Okay, have a lovely week. God bless.